So, and nadm then is the most important thing. But he also mentions this other thing called al-a'tidhar, which he translates here as apology. So the commentator said, a'tidhar liman, who are you apologizing to? Two things. One, it's actually an a'tidhar to Allah, first and foremost, right? That you are presenting a type of apology to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way that we do apology in Islam is that you try to make amends. So if there were things, for example, you were neglecting, and one of the things you need to do is make up for that. You need to rectify the situation. So if there was a period in your life where you weren't praying, or you weren't fasting, or you weren't paying the zakat, it's fine to make tawbah and to be remorseful, but it's also important that you make up for that which you missed. So if you have prayers that you haven't done, you need to make them up. If there's zakat accumulated from previous years, you need to figure out generally how much that was, and you need to rectify that when you have the ability to do so. So a'tidhar to Allah, and also a'tidhar to people, which is kind of the more sensitive part. If you wrong someone, right, then you need to make amends to them. If you backbit them, if you slandered them, if you disparage them in any way by something of the tongue, or obviously something physical, then these things have to be made amends for. So this is a'tidhar, right? At least seeking what we call istihlal, which would be to going to the person and say, forgive me, right? Apologizing, say, I made a mistake. And, you know, we talked previous nights ago about forgiveness and asking for forgiveness, and I think today we have this kind of politician style of forgiveness, right? Which is, you know, and I've received some of these, and perhaps I've probably given some of these, where you say to the person that you offended, well, you know, I'm sorry if you got offended. You know, sorry that you felt that way. That's not an apology, right? You're making it worse, because you're saying implicitly, like, you know, I don't know why you got offended, it shouldn't have, but in case you did, you know, sorry that happened. No, there has to be an acknowledgement, I did something wrong. I made a mistake. I regret what I did, and I realize now that I made a big mistake, and I want to make it up to you. Can you forgive me? Rather than saying, well, we neglect to say, we're regretful to say that if anyone was caused offense by blah, 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 then, you know, we're sorry about that. You don't put conditional phrases in an apology. If you felt this way, or if I did anything to offend you, then I'm really sorry. If you don't, like we said, you have to know the dhanb, you have to know the offense. So if you're saying, if I did, that means you're not acknowledging that you did anything. You're just acknowledging that the other person might have felt offended about it, not that you actually did something wrong to them. So when you apologize, don't make it a fake one. Don't make it a politician's apology, right? Make it sincere, and be sincere, right, in seeking that type of forgiveness. And then thirdly, he says al-iqla', which is to completely cease and desist from that thing that you need to make tawbah from. Because if you're continuing to do it and you're still asking Allah to forgive you while you're doing it, how sincere is that? So at the very least, you should have al-azm, a strong resolve that I'm going to stop doing this. Let's say you fell into it later on, even in the same day. That doesn't mean that your initial tawbah is not accepted or that it's not valid. No, it's still valid. But at the time that you do it, at least have the resolve that you're not going to go do this again, and you have to stop immediately, right, at the very least. Then he says, وَحَقَائِقِ التَّوْبَةِ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء. Then the realities of repentance, how we define it, what makes it real, he mentions three things. تَعْظِيمُ الْجِنَايَةِ وَاتِّهَامُ التَّوْبَةِ وَطَلْبُ إِعْذَارِ الْخَلِيقَةِ. So the first one, reprobation of the offense. In other words, ta'zim al-jinaya, which he said a little bit earlier in the previous section. Ta'zim, in other words, to understand the enormity of the offense. And here I believe he doesn't mean enormity of the offense like, is it a big sin or a little sin? Even the Sahaba, they didn't talk about big sin or little sin. They thought everything that was transgressing against Allah was kind of a big sin, because any transgression against al-azim is azim, right? So any offense against al-azim has to be azim. So that's where ta'zim al-jinaya comes from. That no matter how small it could be, consider it to be big because of the one you transgressed against, not because of the offense itself. We don't have this concept of white lie or little white lie, or it's not a big deal, or it's a small offense. anything that's an offense that Allah asks you not to do, it's a type of offense. We do have the concept of kaba'ir and sagha'ir, of major sins and of minor sins. That's definitely there. But in terms of your internal spiritual life, you should consider them equally grievous and not say, well, it's just a little sin. And he's going to talk later that that's one of the afat, that's one of the things that can actually affect a successful tawbah when you see it as something small and it's not a big deal.